Welcome back, guys. AnimeScale here, and today we're going to talk about something that's been in the works for a while. We're going to be looking at the top 15 forbidden jutsu used in the series. For those that don't know, forbidden jutsu are, well, forbidden. This is usually because they're either very dangerous to the user or they're very dangerous to other people. Well, more than most jutsu are anyway. As always, this list is almost entirely personal opinion, so feel free to share your lists down in the comment section below. Now let's get started. One's own life reincarnation is, well, the ability to heal absolutely anyone, even from death, at the cost of one's own life. This is a pretty simple technique in concept, and is more or less a watered-down version of the RINNE rebirth. Still, there is some nuance to this jutsu we should get into. For one, it's not just your own life you're using to perform the technique, but you're also using all of your chakra as well. So, if your chakra is insufficient, you can have someone else to help you. You don't need to worry though, since only the original user of this technique will lose their life. You can all probably see why this became a forbidden jutsu in the first place. Pretty much any technique that's guaranteed to kill the user is forbidden. In the series, Chiyo used this technique to bring back Gaara from the dead at the start of Shippuden, which was the only time this jutsu was ever shown. The curse mark is probably one of the most double-edged swords in Naruto. The user can put a special mark on one of their targets, and that's where everything begins. For one thing, you're probably not going to survive having the curse mark to begin with. If you do survive, you now have access to a new well of chakra that greatly enhances your own strength. If you continue to use the curse mark, it will develop into its second stage, where the user will be even stronger than they were before. Their body will change, and they'll get some kind of beast transformation. This could be something like wings or horns or anything really. The power amplification in this is no joke, as it allowed Sasuke to keep up with one-tailed Naruto. Now, why is this a forbidden technique? Well, all of that power comes at a cost. That cost being that the seal and its power gradually corrupts the user's mind until they get more and more violent. Oh, and there's a small fact about each curse mark having a piece of Orochimaru's soul inside it. Yeah, this is probably a power you should stay away from. This jutsu is one of the more interesting on this list, which is impressive considering it's also very simple. The user can infuse chakra into different materials, allowing them to control them from a distance. This is pretty much how this jutsu works. What makes this entry interesting is how a user can use the technique. In the series, Deidara combined this jutsu with his explosion release. This resulted in him making objects out of clay that would explode whenever he wanted them to. He could also control them from a pretty big distance, making him a deadly ranged fighter. We've never actually seen anyone ever use this jutsu, but it's safe to say it was memorable all the same. The Earth Grudge Sphere is another forbidden technique that we only ever see one of the members of the Akatsuki use. That alone should show how terrifying this jutsu is. Using it basically transforms your entire body into a body held together by large black strings. These strings are very versatile, making the sacrifice more than worth it. For one thing, these strings make the user much more durable. They can more or less instantly heal from any non-life-threatening injury without much effort. They can also do this for other people, like how Kakazu used it to heal Idan's injuries. If this was it, this jutsu would be underwhelming. What makes this technique really crazy, however, is that it allows you to absorb the body parts of other people, getting stronger in the process. This allowed Kakazu to store 4 different hearts, essentially giving him 4 different lives as well as 4 different chakra natures to use in combat. So guys, just a quick reminder that this video is sponsored by Skillshare, a great online learning platform where you can choose from thousands of amazing classes. Are you interested in animation, photography, graphic design, web development, or video editing? Skillshare has all of that and much, much more. Right now, my favorite class is iPhone Photography, How to Take Pro Photos on Your iPhone by Dale McManus, professional photographer, videographer, and multi-award-winning YouTuber. This class covers everything from setup to shot composition to editing. It gives you great tips on becoming a great photographer just with your iPhone. It's so cool. If you have a passion, new skills you want to learn or improve, Skillshare is the place for you, where you can do all of that while working with teachers and other members of the community. The first 1,000 people to use the link in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, so you can explore your creativity and join the Skillshare community. The 100 healings technique is pretty much the peak of medical ninjutsu in the series. The user can store up their chakra to use later. That doesn't seem that big of a deal until you realize that there really doesn't seem to be any limit to how much chakra you can store up. Someone like Tsunade or Sakura can quite literally store up years of chakra to use during a single fight. While using the seal, the user is, of course, many times stronger than they were previously. The only real limit to how strong someone can get is how much chakra they manage to store up. Using this technique, Sakura even managed to make herself useful, fighting alongside Naruto and Sasuke. We've talked about this technique a few times on this channel, but we might as well go over it again. The Rasen Shuriken is the wind nature version of the Rasengan. This thing goes past most physical defenses, cutting anything it hits at a cellular level. Naruto was banned from using this technique until he could safely throw it. When he could, however, this became a pretty big part of his arsenal. At number 9, we have Living Corpse Reincarnation. There are plenty of jutsu in the show themed around giving the user some kind of immortality. Pretty much every single one of these is forbidden. Among all of these, the Living Corpse Reincarnation stands out because of how versatile it is. Using this technique, a user can take over the body of somebody else, extending their lifespan. This new body is only temporary since it will eventually reject the person taking it over. In the show, Orochimaru could only take over a body for 3 years before he had to move on to a new host. Still, this was the reason Orochimaru was just about always at his prime, since he could just switch over to a strong host whenever his current body was growing weak. Combined with his curse mark holding pieces of his soul, there isn't really any reason why Orochimaru won't still be around in 1,000 years. Explosive tags don't seem like they would be that dangerous, and they probably aren't. A single explosive tag probably isn't going to do much against all but the weakest ninja. Still, what if you had more than one explosive tag? What if you had hundreds, thousands of them? Then, well, you get this forbidden jutsu. Using their own body as a base, a user can send out a series of explosive tags that spawn more explosive tags that still spawn more explosive tags. This pretty much leads to an almost infinite explosion of tags, which is enough to give anyone trouble. This technique is very similar to Conan's paper bomb technique, since they both rely on having an absurd amount of paper bombs to overwhelm their opponent. The reason this technique is forbidden is that it's probably going to kill the person using it too. That is, unless they're of reanimation like Tobirama was when he used this forbidden technique against Obito. Like we mentioned before, Shadow Clones are one of the most iconic jutsu in Naruto. It's also the only jutsu Naruto has used from the start of the series to the very end. This is because it's one of the most powerful techniques you can have. These clones are so realistic, they are indistinguishable from the original body. No matter how crazy the villains got, none of them could recognize Naruto from his shadow clones. Besides that, these clones also remember the last few seconds from before they die, making them perfect for intel gathering. The one drawback to the technique is the absurd amount of chakra it uses, which is why it's a forbidden technique. For Naruto though, this isn't a problem. Naruto can easily spam thousands of clones at once, making them a real nuisance for anyone to get through. It's safe to say the Shadow Clone Jutsu deserves a spot on this list. Just like our first entry on this list, this jutsu also takes away its user's life in exchange for something. In this case, the user can seal away anything they can think of in exchange for their own life. This can get as ridiculous as you can think of, with the 4th Hokage being able to split apart the 9 tails itself. The one caveat is that the user does need to have some energy of their own to use the technique. If they're too weak, then their target can resist the jutsu. This is why a wounded old Hiruzen wasn't able to kill Orochimaru, but only seal away his arms. Now we're getting to the point on this list where just about every technique is truly ridiculous. It all starts off with Izanagi, one of the most absurd jutsu in the whole show. Using this, a user can turn their genjutsu into reality. Basically, here's how it works. A user can sacrifice one of their Sharingan to rewrite a few minutes into the past. They can rewrite just about anything, including the fact that they took a mortal wound. With his arm full of Sharingan, Danzo was able to repeatedly defy death in his fight against Sasuke. This is also the technique responsible for Madara surviving his fight against Hashirama. It's safe to say without this technique, most of the show wouldn't happen. Izanami is yet another forbidden Sharingan technique that comes at a steep price. Yes, just like our last entry, a user has to give up one of their Sharingan if they want to use this technique. This jutsu is an instant kill move. Essentially, it allows someone to put someone else in a sort of time loop, where they're forced to constantly live through the same few minutes over and over again. There is no known way for the victim to escape this technique through brute force. The only way seems to be to acknowledge something the Izanami user wants them to acknowledge. In the series lore, this is supposed to be to force Izanagi users to regret their actions, which is a pretty interesting application. The only time this jutsu was used in the show was when Itachi forced Kabuto into undoing the Edo Tensei, but there's no reason why it can't be used to just kill the person who's standing there comatose. The RINNE Tensei is pretty much Chiyo's Tensei except on steroids. The user can bring back anyone in exchange for their life. Unlike that technique though, the scale of this jutsu is absolutely insane. As far as we know, there's no known limit to the number of people a user can bring back with this technique. Using it, Pain was able to bring back thousands of people in the Leaf Village after he had his change of heart. This was also the technique responsible for bringing Madara fully back to life. In this case, Obito didn't die because he had Black Zetsu attached to his body, keeping him alive. This jutsu needs a lot of chakra to perform, and it puts a lot of strain on your body, resulting in your hair becoming white. Unfortunately, you can't really use this technique without the Rinnegan, but it still more than earns a place on this list. The 8 inner gates are most likely the most absurd power modifier in the entire series. By opening the 8 chakra limiters in their bodies, a user can increase their power many times. How strong can they get? The technique is described as giving anyone power well beyond that of a Kage. Using this, Sky was not only able to keep up with, but almost kill 6-pass Madara, one of the strongest characters in the verse. Unfortunately, all of this comes at a pretty heavy price. Every time the user opens a gate, they have to withstand an almost unbearable amount of pain. When you open all 8 gates, you're all but guaranteed to die unless someone with an equally crazy ability heals you. For a short amount of time, the 8 gates can give anyone the power to do anything. But due to the drawbacks it comes with, I really can't put it at the #1 spot. The Edo Tensei was our first place on the strongest ninjutsu in the series, and it takes the first place on this list too. What can we say about this jutsu that hasn't already been said before? You can revive as many ninja as you want and have them be under your control. These ninjas can be many times stronger than you, and they'll have all the abilities and powers they did during their lifetime. This jutsu is pretty much the only reason why the Shinobi War was a war in the first place. This was probably the one forbidden jutsu that should be forbidden for the writer, even more so than it is for the ninja. So that's it for this video. This list is all just personal opinion as always, so I'm sure plenty of people will have a jutsu I missed or put lower or higher than they would. Don't forget to leave your own list down below, and I'll be back with another video soon. This is AnimeScale out. Bye.